how to flip houses during an economic downturn. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is the factors that impact negotiations, the benefits of negotiating, and how to negotiate effectively. So first, homes sell. No matter what market, homes are always selling. I don't care if interest rates were 20% like in the 1980s or if interest rates are 3 or 4%, homes sell. There's always people buying and there's always people wanting to sell. The question is how many are going to be able to be purchased versus how many people actually want to buy. So interest rates were at 9%. 3.9 million homes sold. In 1991, interest rates went to 18.1%, and homes still sold almost 2 million homes. Now, did it go down? Yeah, it went from almost 4 million homes that sold to having 2 million homes sold. But my point is, with interest rates going up more than doubling, you see there's still 2 million houses that actually sold. So you can't get into this idea of like, oh, homes aren't going to sell. There are always people buying, always people selling, regardless of what the interest rate is. The question is, how many people want to buy versus how many people want to sell, and what is the affordability on that? Now, this was down 3.9 million, but there are always buyers. The question is, how can you make sure your home is one of those that they're going to be wanting to purchase? And the way you can do that is by staying under the FHA price range. Stay under that FHA price range because FHA sets a maximum loan amount based upon the county that you're in. And you want to be less than the FHA for your area, or less than $500,000 is my recommendation. The reason is you have the most amount of buyers who can actually buy those types of properties. When you're dealing with higher end properties, you can get yourself in some more trouble. So the majority of buyers are getting an FHA loan. So it's the easiest, simplest loan to get. And that's why we want to be playing in that marketplace. There's the most majority of the buyers that are actually there. So much more time to sell. One of the things you can look at is check on DOM, which is considered days on market. And basically what this tells us is how many days was the property on market before it went under contract, okay? So there's days on market, there's contract days on market. Now, time to sell a home in your specific area, that's something that you need to have a great idea on. How long has it been taking for homes in that area to actually sell, which goes back to that days on market. So you need to plan on this taking longer in an economic downturn. You need to plan on having to potentially make some more lender payments if that was something that was part of your agreement, or you can see if you can escrow more payments, which is what my recommendation is work with the lender and say, hey, you know what, I think it's gonna take me a few more months to sell. Can we escrow that into the deal? Now, the deal's got to be good enough that it can afford to have that as part of the loan to value. Paid closing costs. Buyer wants to put as little money down as possible. So when you're reselling this property, what you want to know is be prepared to pay some of the closing costs. And you can even increase the price to pay the closing costs, but you just want to be aware of that because FHA, Federal Housing Administration, will allow the seller to pay for buyer's closing costs, which means the end buyer is going to come up with little money, which makes it easier for you to sell the property. So just be prepared for that because anything we can do to help that buyer be incentivized to purchase our property, the better. So don't get hung up on the fact that it's the buyer's responsibility to pay the buyer's costs. That's just stupid. What we're looking at here is focusing on what are we actually getting? What price are we getting? Whether I pay, $5,000 or $10,000 in the buyer's selling costs, what is it I end up with after I pay those things? That is what's important to me. It doesn't matter if I pay buyer's costs or don't pay buyer's costs. But I've seen some people that just have this unwillingness, like I'm never going to pay for buyer's fees if I'm selling a property. I'm like, who cares if you're paying for buyer's fees or not? What you should care about is what does that look like in an offer to you after you net out those fees and costs. So let's just say that your home's $100,000. You're offered $100,000, but you need to pay 3% in buyer's closing costs. That means your real net on this is going to be $97,000. So are you okay with $97,000? If so, let's move forward. If not, maybe we need to do a counter offer. So there's no difference between a $97,000 offer and $100,000 paying $3,000 in buyer's closing costs, which equals $97,000. Those are the same same to you. So don't get hung up on, oh, I'm paying their closing costs or not paying their closing costs. It doesn't matter. What is it going to look like to you? And that's really important because I've seen people get hung up on, I don't want to pay those. So we want to buy the best deal we possibly can, and then we want to pass on a good deal to the end buyer. As we're talking about economic downturn, what's really important is we want to leave some meat on the bone. What I mean by that is I want to make sure that that end buyer is getting a good deal. I want to make sure that my house is the best deal that's out there when I'm reselling that property. So I've got to make sure I'm getting a little bit even better deal now based upon if there's an economic downturn. So that's important that I'm negotiating. And that's the thing. Plan on negotiating. You are going to have to negotiate to resell this property. You are going to more than likely have to pay some closing costs. You are going to have to take some discounts. Build that into your model. I plan on 5% negotiating room, and that could be for closing costs, that could be for buyer's costs, it could be for whatever, but these are concessions that I'm willing to make. You can go as high as 5 to 10% is going to give you a lot, and that also would include 3% to the buyer's closing costs would be included in that 5 to 10%. So I like to plan on somewhere in there, 5 to 10%, depending upon what market you're in, depending upon what days on market, depending on what's happening. But I think you should always plan on at least 5% negotiating room, and that can be a reduction in price. That can be we'll pay 3% in your closing costs and give you a little bit of reduction in price. There's some ways you can play with that. So make your house a little better than the competition. This is one of my secrets. A lot of people just don't understand this. It's all about being a little bit better than anything else. So let's walk through this scenario, okay? So let's say your home is on the market and the active homes is what you're looking at. Your home should look like all the active homes and the homes just recently sold. So if they all have carpet or tile or granite or vinyl, whatever the case is that they have, you want to be in that same criteria. You don't want to overdo it and you don't want to underdo it. So you want to be looking at all those properties. Then what you want to do is pick one extra thing and make it a little bit better. So let's say that everything in this price range has vinyl floors in the kitchen, in the bathrooms and that type of stuff. Well, maybe we should just up it a little bit and we're gonna, instead of doing vinyl floors, we're gonna put in tile because that's just a little bit of an upgrade. It's not a huge expense to us given that we're already replacing and putting in vinyl. Maybe it's gonna cost us an extra $1,000, $1,500, maybe $2,000, but it's gonna have that extra thing. So when people walk in, they say, you know, this is just like all the other houses except for it has the tile, or except for it has the granite countertops and everything else just has laminate. Boy, I really like those granite countertops. I want one thing. Don't overdo this, but there's one thing that's gonna say, hey, it's gonna make me stand apart from the rest of the things that are actually have sold that I'm using as comparables. So we talked about this, adding the tile and the vinyl. So those are things I want to be just like the other ones, but one thing we make a little bit better. The other thing that's really important here as we talk about economic downturn is you don't want to chase the market. Chasing the market means you keep lowering the price too late and then you end up chasing the market as it's going down. So when you are making these price reductions, when you're looking at prices, it's better to be bold up front and rather than waiting, because as you wait, it actually gets more expensive. You've got interest, you've got taxes, you've got insurance, you've got maintenance, you've got all kinds of things that are adding up. And if the market is heading down, if you keep just adjusting a little bit, you're gonna be chasing the market. Whereas if you make a big adjustment now, it'll be a good deal that people will want to purchase it and you won't have to continue to chase the market. So that's really important to keep an eye on that. If you take too long to lower your price, you're gonna chase the market. My rule of thumb is every 30 days, I readjust my price and I'm either gonna adjust it by 3% is typically what I'm doing unless I'm getting some feedback on some things. Because remember, it's price, condition, or marketing, right? If you've got it listed with a good agent, marketing should be taking care of itself. Then it comes to price and condition. So if people don't like the price, it may be because of the condition of the property, so you can improve the condition or you can lower the price. So those are the things you have to look at when you're looking at it. It's price, condition, or marketing. That's one of the reasons why that property's not selling. We've got to fix one of those so that we can make it sell. You'd rather bet ahead of the market than be behind it. So if you do a price reduction, do a little more than you think that you need to so you can get ahead of the market rather than chasing the market. Now, buying materials that supply houses want to get rid of. This is a great way to save some money, but you have to make sure they're good quality and you have to make sure that they're going to look good with the property. I don't want you going out there buying bright red carpet because they're going to give it to you at some killer deal. That defeats the whole purpose of it. But do they have some stuff that's been sitting around for a while that looks really good? They'll say, hey, we'll give this to you. Maybe it's you're going to get a higher quality and for the same price. Well, that's also a good thing. So one of the things I like to do when I go in and say, hey, what do you have? Let's just use carpet as an example. What do you have that's great carpet that you just have way too much of that you'd love to just get rid of? That's, that's good carpet that somebody would want to buy. And then I try and make a deal with them from there. So that's really good, but you got to make sure it matches your color scheme and it's going to go with the house, because the last thing you want to do is make it look even worse with this carpet that you've gotten a good deal on. Okay. Supply houses have inventory. They may want to do some liquidations. They may want to do some markdowns, depending upon how long they've had that. They may say, you know what, we just need to get rid of this. Maybe they had a misorder where they ordered the wrong stuff and got stuck with it because of this, or maybe somebody wanted it and they ordered it and didn't pay for that, or they put a deposit down, they can give it to you. Those are all things that you can look at. The next thing that's really important, and I think this is important not just in an economic downturn, but anytime, you've got to get at least 2 contractor bids. You've got to get those. So it's good all the time, but it's especially important when we're dealing with an economic downturn. You want to have a sense of reality here. And if you get one contractor bid for $50,000, another one for $70,000, you probably want to move to a third, because what's reality here? If they're giving the same scope of work, they're doing the same work for the property, which is something that our project managers will help you understand in putting a scope of work together. Why is there a $20,000 price difference? Something you've got to look into and something you need to know. So another reason that you may want to be getting another bid. Now, the other thing that you've got to be aware of in an economic downturn is when you are reselling the property. If it is a fix and flip type situation, the new buyer's lender may require 2 appraisals. Okay, so rather than just one appraisal, they may say, hey, we want 2 appraisals from the end buyer's lender to make sure that they really feel the value's there, because the property was purchased for a lot less money. It's been fixed up and they want to make really sure that that value is there. Nothing to be afraid of. The way you can help with this is by saving receipts, okay? So if you can keep track of all the expenses and everything you've put into that property, then it can help you in saying, hey, this is what we spent on the property. We have copies of the receipts, the payments, those types of things. Now, I don't give them to them unless they ask for it, but there are times where the lender's going to say, hey, we want to justify the work that's been done to the property, and I have that all ready to go that I can hand over to them. So keeping track of that paperwork is essential. I was just digging through trying to find some paperwork. Oh, excuse me. Oh, on some old deals and struggling to do that. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have kept better records. The other thing we got to talk about here is seasoning. So after 2008, with the real estate crash, lenders wanted to make sure owners were on title for at least 90 days, meaning they didn't want somebody to get it and turn around and sell it really quickly if they were going to be providing like funding like FHA and those things. Now things have changed, but I think you'll see this. So you can go under contract on the day 91, but that's actually okay, because if you think about it, it's going to take me 30 or 60 days to get the work done. It's probably going to take me another 30 days to find somebody who wants to buy it. So in most cases, this isn't an issue, but keep in mind, there may be some seasoning requirements, which means you have to have owned the property for so long as the seller before that lender is going to come in and do it. Now, is every lender going to require that? No, but it's something you should be aware of when we're talking about an economic downturn. The other thing that's really important is curb appeal. You may have been able to get away with your curb appeal not being the greatest in the past, simply because there was a lot of demand. Well, now as we start seeing it soften, I've seen people drive by properties and they just keep going because they don't want to stop because of the way the outside looks. So you've got to make sure that your outside is presentable. It's in the same condition or better condition than the rest of the neighbors. You want it to fit in. You don't want it to be that house when everybody's driving down and they're like, that's the crappy house. You want it to look good or better than the neighbors that are there. Now, let's jump into a quick recap here. What have you learned today? Well, number one, you want to make sure that you're buying your resale price for properties that you're buying are either under $500,000 or under the FHA what they will lend for a single family house. It's very important. You want to plan on it being on the market longer. When you're selling it, it's going to be on the market longer. You want to plan on paying buyer's costs. You're going to want to plan on negotiating a little bit more. You're going to plan on making your house just a little bit better than the others by putting in that tile, that granite, whatever the case may be. And you also want to make sure that you're not chasing the market. It's also important to realize and know that people buy houses no matter what the interest rates are. You just have to be the best deal and the best condition out there for them to be willing to do that. Next thing we talked about is looking for materials discounts. How can I get discounts for good quality that's going to look good, that's going to match my color scheme? Also, getting multiple bids from contractors becomes really important, especially as we were talking about an economic downturn, and prepare for the potential of your end buyer needing to get to appraisals. Also, saving your receipts if you have to justify the work and those things that actually went into the property. We also talked a little bit about seasoning and that idea of maybe having to have that property for 90 days before a new buyer can actually buy that. I don't think that's a big issue. I just want to make sure that you are aware of that because it could come and a lender may want some seasoning. Also, curb appeal matters. I think in the past we've been able to get away with curb appeal not being as great as it should have because there was a lot of demand for people wanting to purchase properties. There was not enough supply with really high demand. We need to make sure the curb appeal matches